The research station on Cronus 7 was cold and lonely. Dr. HFY stood at the edge of the settlement, looking out at the vast, empty plains that stretched for miles. The wind was harsh and unforgiving. She wore a thick suit to protect herself from the planet's dangerous atmosphere. Her job was to study the alien planet's rocks and soil samples, but she spent most of her time thinking about the silence. The station had 12 people working there, but they all seemed to avoid talking to each other. Everyone was busy with their own work. Everyone was focused on their own research. HFY was different. She noticed things that other people did not notice. She saw the small details. She felt the small emotions. This quality had made her a good scientist, but it also made her lonely. On the morning of the 16th day, HFY decided to take a walk beyond the perimeter of the station. It was against the rules. Dr. Tae-sung, the mission commander, had made it very clear. Nobody was allowed to go beyond the safe zone. The planet was dangerous. The Ketronids lived beyond the perimeter. They were an apex predator species, known throughout the galaxy for their power and their hunger for violence. They were not friendly. They were not interested in peace. They were interested only in hunting and killing. But HFY felt something pulling her forward. She did not know what it was. It was not a voice or a sound. It was more like a feeling in her heart. She wanted to see something real. She wanted to see something alive. She put on her suit, checked her oxygen levels, and walked out into the wilderness. The plains were strange and beautiful. Purple grass grew in patches across the gray earth. Strange rock formations rose up like ancient monuments. The sky was darker than Earth's sky, with a reddish tint that made everything look like it was burning. HFY walked for almost an hour, recording data and taking photographs. She was so focused on her work that she almost missed the sound. It was a small sound, a weak sound, a sound like pain mixed with hunger. She turned around and saw them. 3 creatures lay on the ground near a group of rocks. They were young, very young. She had seen pictures of adult Ketronids before. They were massive beasts with thick fur and enormous teeth. These creatures were much smaller, but they had the same basic shape. They were about the size of large dogs, but their heads were much bigger. Their eyes were large and round and golden yellow in color. Their fur was dark blue, almost black. One of the creatures moved its head when HFY approached. It made a weak crying sound. The sound made her chest hurt. HFY knew what she was looking at. These were cubs, baby Ketronids. They were alone and abandoned. This should have made her afraid. These creatures would grow into monsters. They would become killers. They would hunt humans if they got the chance. But HFY was not afraid. She was sad. She understood what it was like to be alone. She understood what it was like to be abandoned. She had never known her own father. Her mother had worked so many hours that HFY spent most of her childhood with other people. She had always felt like she did not belong anywhere. Looking at these 3 young creatures, she saw something of herself. She saw pain and confusion and the desperate need to belong to someone. Without thinking about the danger, HFY removed her gloves. She slowly reached toward the closest cub. The creature's eyes moved to look at her. It made another small sound. HFY's hands were shaking. She touched the cub's head very gently. The fur was warm and soft. The creature closed its eyes. It made a different sound this time, not a sound of pain, a sound of comfort, a sound of relief. HFY spent the next 2 hours sitting with the 3 cubs. She gave them water from her suit's supply container. She broke apart some emergency food rations and let them eat small pieces. They were very hungry. They ate quickly and without violence. They seemed grateful. They seemed to understand that she was trying to help them. When it was time to go back to the station, HFY faced a problem. She could not leave the cubs here. They would die. The planet was too harsh. Predators hunted here. The cubs were too weak to survive alone. But she also knew that bringing them back to the station would cause serious problems. Dr. Tae-sung would be angry. The other scientists would be afraid. They might force her to kill the cubs, They might say it was too dangerous to keep them alive. HFY made a decision. She made a harness from her extra equipment. She carefully placed the 3 cubs on the harness. They were heavy, but not too heavy. She could carry them. She began the long walk back to the station. Her heart was beating very fast. She was scared and excited at the same time. When HFY reached the perimeter of the station, she did not go to the main entrance. Instead, she went to the storage building. It was old, and it was almost never used. She kept the 3 cubs inside this building. She gave them food and water. She set up a warm space for them to sleep. Then she went back to the main station. She told nobody what she had done. She kept her secret hidden inside her chest like a burning coal. Every day, she went to the storage building when nobody was watching. Every day, she brought the cubs food. Every day, she talked to them and touched them and let them rest their heads against her legs. The cubs grew stronger. Their eyes became brighter. They started making sounds that were not sounds of pain anymore. They started making sounds that seemed almost like laughter. HFY named them Kira, Davin, and Soren. These were names that felt right to her. These were names that felt like home. 2 weeks passed. The 3 cubs grew noticeably every single day. Kira was the smallest but the fastest. She had a curious mind and she liked to explore every corner of the storage building. Davin was the strongest. His muscles were growing larger and his roar was becoming deeper. Soren was the quietest. He spent most of his time sleeping and eating, building his strength in silence. HFY had to bring them larger and larger portions of food. She started taking extra rations from the kitchen. She told the kitchen staff that she was getting hungry because the work was tiring. Nobody questioned her. They did not look carefully at her. They did not notice what she was doing, but her secret became harder to keep every single day. On the 15th day, Kira managed to escape from the storage building. HFY was bringing them their breakfast when she noticed the door was slightly open. Her heart fell into her stomach. She ran outside and found Kira walking toward the main station building. The cub was small enough that nobody would immediately recognize what she was, but if anyone looked carefully, they would know that she was not a normal animal. HFY called out to Kira in a soft voice. The cub heard her and turned around. Kira came running back to her, moving quickly on her 4 strong legs. HFY picked her up and held her against her chest. She could feel the cub's heart beating fast. She could feel Kira's fear and confusion. She whispered to the cub that everything was going to be okay. She promised that she would protect her. Then she carried Kira back to the storage building and fixed the door so it could not open again. But the incident scared HFY. She knew that keeping the cubs hidden was not possible anymore. They were growing too fast. They were getting too strong. They were becoming too big to hide. She had to make a choice. She could either keep the secret and hope that the cubs stayed hidden, or she could tell someone the truth and ask for help. She spent all night thinking about this. She thought about what Dr. Tae-sung would say. He would say that the cubs were dangerous. He would say that they had to be destroyed. He would say that her feelings did not matter. He would say that science and safety were more important than emotion. But then HFY thought about something different. She thought about the other scientists on the station. She thought about Dr. Yoonji, the biologist. Yoonji was young, and she was intelligent. Yoonji asked questions about everything. Maybe Yoonji would understand. Maybe Yoonji would see what HFY had seen. Maybe Yoonji would see the cubs not as monsters, but as living creatures who deserved to live. HFY made a decision. She would tell Yoonji everything. She found Dr. Yoonji in the laboratory, looking at samples through a powerful microscope. HFY's hands were shaking. Her voice was not steady. She told Yoonji that she had something to show her, something important, something that they needed to keep secret. Yoonji looked up from her microscope with surprise in her eyes. She did not ask questions. She just followed HFY to the storage building. When they entered and Yoonji saw the 3 cubs, she made a sound like she had been hit. She could not speak. She could only stare. The cubs stared back at her. They did not move. They seemed to sense that this was an important moment. This was a moment that would change everything. HFY told Yunji the entire story. She told her about finding the cubs on the plains. She told her about how weak they were. She told her about how she had decided to save them. She told her about how she had brought them here and hidden them. She told her about her secret. She told her about how much she cared about them. Yunji listened without interrupting. When HFY finished talking, Yunji slowly walked toward the cubs. She moved very carefully, very slowly. The cubs watched her, but they did not seem afraid. Yunji reached out her hand toward Davin. The young predator sniffed her fingers. Then Davin moved his head against her palm. It was a gesture of acceptance. Yunji's eyes filled with tears. "This is incredible," Yunji said. "They are bonding with humans. This is not supposed to be possible. The Ketronids are apex predators. They are violent creatures. They should see us as food or as enemies. But this is not what I am seeing. I am seeing intelligence. I am seeing emotion. I am seeing connection." HFY felt relief flood through her body. She was no longer alone with her secret. She had someone to help her. She had someone who understood. "We cannot tell anyone yet," Yunji said. "If we tell Dr. Tae-sung now, he will make us destroy them. We need more time. We need to understand what is happening. We need to build evidence that shows these creatures should be allowed to live. Will you help me?" HFY nodded. She did not hesitate. She would do anything to protect the cubs. Over the next 3 weeks, HFY and Yunji worked together in secret. They documented everything about the cubs' behavior. They recorded their growth patterns. They analyzed their vocalizations. They studied how the cubs responded to different situations. They learned that the cubs recognized HFY's presence and became calm when she was near. They learned that the cubs were intelligent, and they learned quickly. Most importantly, they learned that the cubs seemed to think of HFY as their mother. The cubs would follow her everywhere. They would make soft sounds when she came near. They would rest their heads on her legs and fall asleep. The bond between HFY and the 3 cubs was unlike anything that science had ever documented before. It was beautiful, and it was strong, and it was absolutely real. The storage building was becoming too small. The 3 cubs were growing rapidly. Kira was now the size of a large dog. Davin was as large as a young wolf. Soren was bigger than both of them. Their horns were starting to grow. Their teeth were becoming longer. Their claws were becoming sharper. HFY and Yunji knew that they could not keep the cubs hidden much longer. The other people at the station would eventually discover them. They had to prepare for this. They had to be ready to defend the cubs when the truth came out. HFY spent more and more time with the cubs. She brought them to different parts of the storage building. She exposed them to new sounds and new experiences. She wanted them to become comfortable with different environments. She wanted them to be able to move around the station when the time came. The cubs responded well to everything. They were intelligent and they were adaptable. They were also loyal. They would do anything that HFY asked them to do. They would go anywhere that HFY wanted them to go. Yunji prepared her report. She documented everything that she and HFY had learned about the cubs. She explained their intelligence. She explained their emotional capacity. She explained their bond with HFY. She made a powerful scientific argument that these creatures should be allowed to live. She said that they might represent a new possibility for human-alien relations. She said that they might be the key to understanding the Ketronid species better. She said that destroying them would be a terrible loss of knowledge and a terrible loss of life. The report was finished and ready, but they did not present it yet. They were waiting for the right moment. The right moment came on a day when HFY was not thinking about the cubs at all. It was midday at the research station. The sun was high in the reddish sky. Most of the scientists were in their laboratories or out doing field work. The cafeteria was busy with the lunch crowd. People were getting food and sitting down at tables and eating and talking. HFY had finished her morning work. She was hungry. She decided to go to the cafeteria and get something to eat. She did not know that the cubs had gotten out of the storage building. She did not know that Kira had found a way to open the door. She did not know that the cubs had been following her around the station for the last 10 minutes. When HFY entered the cafeteria, she was thinking about the research she had been doing. She was thinking about rocks and mineral content. She was thinking about soil samples and analysis. She walked to the food counter. She picked up a tray. She started filling it with food, reconstituted proteins, vegetable paste, bread made from grain-like plants that grew on the planet. She was reaching for a drink when she heard a sound behind her. It was a soft sound, a familiar sound, a sound that made her freeze. She turned around slowly. The 3 cubs were standing in the cafeteria. They were standing in the middle of the eating area. Every single person in the cafeteria had stopped moving. Every person was staring at the cubs with their eyes wide open. Some people were standing up from their chairs. Some people were moving away from the cubs. Some people were so afraid that they could not move at all. The cubs did not seem to notice any of this. Their eyes were only on HFY. They were looking at her the way that a child looks at their mother. They were waiting for her to tell them what to do. Dr. Min-ho, who was eating lunch nearby, made a choking sound. His drink fell out of his hand. It spilled across his food. Everyone looked at him and then back at the cubs. "Do not move," someone said. It was Dr. Min Kyung, the station's psychologist. She was speaking very slowly and very calmly. She was using her professional voice, the voice she used when she was trying to calm someone down. "Do not move. Stay very still. These creatures are dangerous." But the creatures were not doing anything dangerous. The cubs were walking toward HFY. They were moving slowly and carefully. Kira was in front. She approached HFY and made a soft, chirping sound. She rubbed her head against HFY's leg. Davin and Soren did the same thing. They surrounded HFY and they made sounds of recognition and happiness. They were happy to see her. They wanted to be near her. They wanted to show everyone that she was important to them. HFY's heart was pounding in her chest. She touched Kira's head. She touched Davin's shoulder. She touched Soren's neck. She could feel their warmth. She could feel their joy. She could feel their loyalty. "HFY," a voice said. It was Dr. Tae-sung. He had come out of his office and he was standing at the edge of the cafeteria. His face was red with anger. His hands were clenched into fists. "What is going on? Where did these creatures come from?" HFY took a deep breath. This was the moment. This was the moment when everything would change. She held her hand up and the cubs sat down. They sat down like dogs sitting for their master. They sat down perfectly and quietly. Everyone in the cafeteria gasped. No one had ever seen Ketronids behave like this before. No one had ever seen them obey a command. "Dr. Tae-sung," HFY said. Her voice was not shaking anymore. She was calm. She was confident. She was ready for whatever would come next. "I need to tell you about something that happened 2 weeks ago. I need to tell you about why I went beyond the perimeter. I need to tell you the truth." The cafeteria was completely silent. Every eye was on HFY. Every ear was waiting to hear what she would say next. The 3 cubs sat beside her, waiting and watching. They were waiting for their mother to speak. They were waiting to hear what would happen to them now. They were waiting to see if they would be allowed to stay in this place where they had found safety and love and the beginning of something that felt like home. HFY told the entire story. She spoke without stopping. She told them about walking beyond the perimeter. She told them about finding the cubs alone and abandoned. She told them about how weak the cubs had been. She told them about how she had decided to save them. She explained everything that she and Yoonji had learned. She described the cubs' intelligence. She talked about their emotional capacity. She showed them Yoonji's research report. She argued that these creatures deserved to live. She argued that they might represent a new kind of relationship between humans and Ketronids. When she finished speaking, the cafeteria was still completely silent. Dr. Tae-sung stared at her for a long time. His face was hard to read. He was thinking. He was trying to decide what to do. Finally, he spoke. "This is a serious violation of protocol," he said. His voice was cold and angry. "You went beyond the perimeter without permission. You brought dangerous creatures to the station without reporting them. You hid them for 2 weeks. You have endangered everyone here. These creatures are Ketronids. They are apex predators. They are not pets. They are not domestic animals. They are killers." "With respect, Dr. Tae-sung," Yoonji said. She was standing up now. She was standing beside HFY. "They are also intelligent beings. They are capable of emotion. They are capable of bonding with others. Everything that I have documented proves this. We have an opportunity here that will never come again. We have a chance to understand the Ketronids. We have a chance to create peace where there has only been conflict." Dr. Tae-sung made an angry gesture. "Bring them to the containment facility. We will keep them separate from the crew. We will run tests. We will determine if they are safe. Until then, this woman and Dr. Yoonji are both under investigation for violating station protocol." "No," Kira said, not with words, but with a sound of distress. The cubs stood up and moved closer to HFY. Davin and Soren stood up as well. They surrounded HFY protectively. Their bodies became tense. They were ready to defend her. Everyone in the cafeteria moved away from the cubs. But the cubs did not attack. They did not show their teeth. They did not make threatening sounds. They simply stayed close to HFY. They showed that they would not be separated from her. "If you take them away from her," Min Kyung said, "you will damage the bond. You will cause them psychological harm. The attachment between them is not something that you can break without consequences." Dr. Tae-sung looked frustrated. He was facing something that he did not know how to handle. He was facing an impossible situation. The rules said that the cubs should be destroyed or confined. But the reality was that the cubs were intelligent. The reality was that they were emotionally connected to a human. The reality was that forcing them apart might cause serious problems. "Call an emergency council meeting," Dr. Tae-sung said finally. "We will vote on what to do with these creatures. Everyone will have a say. HFY, you and Yoonji will present your evidence. Myself and the other senior scientists will present our concerns. We will make a decision together." The emergency meeting happened 3 hours later. Everyone on the station was present. 12 humans in a room together. All of them nervous. All of them scared. All of them uncertain about what the right choice was. HFY and Yoonji presented their report. They showed the data. They explained the cubs' intelligence. They explained the bond. They explained why killing the cubs would be wrong. They explained why the cubs should be allowed to live. Then Dr. Tae-sung and the other senior scientists presented their arguments. They talked about danger. They talked about risk. They talked about protocol. They talked about keeping the human crew safe. They talked about the history of the Ketronids. They talked about the violence and the killing. They argued that the cubs should be destroyed. Dr. Minho spoke up. He was the one who had almost choked in the cafeteria. He said that he had been afraid when he saw the cubs. But he said that the cubs had not harmed him. He said that they had only come to be near HFY. He said that maybe they deserved a chance to live. Dr. Jiwon, the station engineer, said that they could build a safe area for the cubs, an area where they could live comfortably, an area that could be monitored, an area that would keep both the cubs and the humans safe. The discussion continued for 3 hours. There was anger, and there was tears. There was fear, and there was hope. Finally, they voted. 8 people voted to allow the cubs to stay on the station under supervision. 4 people voted to destroy them. The cubs were allowed to live, but there was a condition. The cubs had to be kept in a special containment facility. They would have food brought to them. They would have space to live. But they would not have the freedom that Haiwan wanted for them. They would not be allowed to roam the station freely. Haiwan was devastated. Yunji tried to comfort her. But Haiwan knew that the cubs would suffer in confinement. She knew that they needed her. She knew that they would be lonely and unhappy without her. That night, she made a choice. She went to the containment facility where the cubs were being held. She brought them food. She sat with them for hours. The cubs rested their heads on her lap. They made soft sounds. She promised them that she would find a way to make their lives better. She promised them that she would not abandon them. She promised them that they would be together again. Over the next 2 weeks, something unexpected happened. The cubs began to refuse their food. They would not eat unless Haiwan brought it to them. They would not rest unless she was there. They became depressed and unhappy. Their health began to decline. Dr. Yunji came to Haiwan with a worried expression. "They are suffering," Yunji said. "The separation from you is causing them physical and psychological damage. We need to do something. We need to find a way to keep them together." Haiwan thought about this problem all night. She thought about what could be done. She thought about what would make the cubs happy. And then she had an idea that was crazy, an idea that was impossible, but an idea that might work. She went to Dr. Min Kyung and asked for her help. Dr. Min Kyung listened to Haiwan's idea carefully. Her eyes grew wider as she understood what Haiwan was proposing. It was bold. It was creative. It was something that had never been tried before on any space station. But it was also logical. It was scientifically sound. It was based on real understanding of how the cubs thought and how they behaved. "You want to integrate them into the regular station life," Min Kyung said slowly. "You want to let them move around the station freely. You want to let them eat in the cafeteria with the rest of us." "Yes," Haiwan said. "The cubs are suffering because they are separated from the station community. They are suffering because they are separated from me. But what if they were not separated? What if they could be part of our daily life? What if they could eat with us and be around us? They are intelligent enough to understand boundaries. They are loyal enough to listen to me. They would not cause problems. They would become part of our community." "Dr. Tae-sung will never agree to this," Min Kyung said. "Maybe not," Haiwan replied. "But you are a psychologist. You understand how the mind works. You understand how attachment works. You can explain to him why this is necessary. You can explain why the cubs need this. You can help him understand." Min Kyung was silent for a long time. She was thinking about the ethics of the situation. She was thinking about what was right and what was wrong. She was thinking about the welfare of the cubs. She was thinking about the safety of the crew. Finally, she nodded. "I will help you," she said. "But we need to prepare the crew. We need to teach them how to behave around the cubs. We need to make sure that everyone is ready for this change." Min Kyung called another meeting. She explained the situation to the crew. She explained the psychological damage that the cubs were suffering. She explained that separation from Haiwan was causing them serious harm. She explained that the only solution was to integrate them into the station's daily life. She explained that the cubs could be trusted. She explained that they would not be dangerous if they were treated with respect. "These creatures are not different from us in the way that matters," Min Kyung said. "They need love. They need connection. They need to feel like they belong somewhere. Haiwan has given them these things. If we take these things away, we will cause them to suffer. If we allow them to stay with her, they will be happy. They will be calm. They will be safe." The crew discussed the idea. Many people were nervous. Many people were afraid. But many people were also starting to understand. They were starting to see the cubs not as monsters, but as creatures that deserved to live and to be happy. They were starting to see that Haiwan had done something good. She had saved these creatures when they were going to die. She had given them a chance at life. Finally, Dr. Tae-sung agreed. He agreed with conditions. The cubs would be allowed in common areas of the station. They would be allowed to eat in the cafeteria. But they would have to behave. They would have to follow rules. They would have to be under Haiwan's control at all times. If anything goes wrong, he said to Haiwan, if these creatures show even one sign of aggression, they will be confined again. Do you understand? I understand, Haiwan said. She understood perfectly. She knew what she had to do. The next day, the cubs were released from the containment facility. They went immediately to Haiwan. They rubbed their heads against her. They made happy sounds. They had been miserable in confinement. Now they were free. Now they were happy. Now they were home. Haiwan took them to the cafeteria for lunch. Everyone was nervous. The cafeteria fell silent when they entered. But the cubs did not do anything wrong. They sat beside Haiwan's table. They waited. They watched her. They acted like they were part of the crew. When Haiwan gave them food, they ate it politely. They did not growl. They did not show their teeth. They did not threaten anyone. They simply ate and rested and waited for Haiwan to finish her meal. Day after day, the routine continued. The cubs ate in the cafeteria. They became familiar to the crew. The crew became less afraid of them. People started to see them differently. They started to see their intelligence. They started to see their loyalty. They started to see them as individuals with personalities. Kira was curious and energetic. She liked to explore. She liked to learn new things. She would sometimes follow crew members and watch what they were doing with interest. Davin was strong and protective. He seemed to take his role as Haiwan's guardian seriously, but he was also gentle. When Minho dropped his food tray one day, Davin helped him pick it up. The crew was amazed. Soren was quiet and thoughtful. He seemed to understand emotions. When someone was sad or upset, he would sit near them. He would make soft sounds. It was like he was trying to comfort them. Something remarkable started to happen. The crew began to care about the cubs. They began to see them as part of the station community. They began to respect them. And the cubs began to respect the crew in return. One day, Minho's food processor in his quarters broke down. He could not make his meals. He was frustrated and upset. He came to the cafeteria, but he did not get any food. Haiwan noticed that he looked sad. Davin noticed it too. The large cub stood up and left the cafeteria. Everyone was confused. Where was he going? What was he doing? Davin returned 10 minutes later. He was carrying a piece of meat in his mouth. Raw meat, fresh meat from his own supply. He brought it to Minho and placed it in front of him. The gesture was clear. This is for you. This is a gift from me to you. This is what we do for friends. Minho had tears in his eyes. He sat down and he stroked Davin's head. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for understanding. The other crew members saw this. They saw that Davin was capable of kindness. They saw that he was capable of sharing. They saw that he was capable of caring about humans. After that day, everything changed. The crew started bringing extra food to the cafeteria for the cubs. They started talking to the cubs. They started building relationships with them. The research station on Cafeteria 7 was no longer a cold and lonely place. It was becoming a home where humans and alien creatures lived together in peace. A home where compassion and understanding meant more than fear and protocol. A home where a woman's decision to save 3 small creatures had created something beautiful, something that nobody had believed was possible.